Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today's build is the Marrow Shards Necromancer. Now we're going to be converting all of our health leech into damage, which will give us a huge amount of damage. I've seen it go as high as 2000% spell damage. We'll be using Marrow Shards and Bone Curse. We'll be applying Bone Curse on hit and using both of those together to apply a lot of hit damage. That all stacks, both of them synergize together with physical and with spell damage. So those two together will be the two things that we're stacking on everything, and what it equals is a huge area spread, because we'll have Marrow Shards splitting into its Bone Shards when it splits into multiple projectiles, and then we'll be taking all of the extra speed and range on those. You get double cast on Marrow Shards, and you're just applying hit on everything. We'll also be running it as a low life build, and because we can stack a lot of int in the passive tree and on the gear, you actually have an incredible amount of ward retention, which leads to us sitting in town with just 3600 life. We sit at 8300 ward stable, which is huge. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the skills. For skills, we're running at Marrow Shards, Dread Shade, Transplant, Bone Curse, and Summon Bone Golem. For Marrow Shards, we have 7 points in double cast chance, so that we'll have a 98% chance every time we cast Marrow Shards for it to cast again. We have 2 points in dead weight for some more hit damage. This does reduce the projectile range of Marrow Shards, but that's okay because we're basically wanting it to split as fast as possible. 1 point in Bone Splinters, so that your Bone Splinters on hit, which means that the Marrow Shards will now, whenever it hits an enemy, split into multiple projectiles called Bone Splinters. Each one of those will be able to go on and hit another enemy. 1 point in Marrow Caster, so that destruction will no longer happen when you hit an enemy. Now it's going to happen wherever you point your mouse. So you'll be able to split it right in front of you and have the projectiles kind of shotgun out, which is what makes this build so fun. We have 3 points in Carving to increase the Bone Splinters hit damage, 6 points in Ghost Splinters to make them go really fast and really far. The reason that we didn't really build too much into the damage is because Bone Curse is what's really doing the hit damage. We just wanted as many projectiles as possible. We wanted them to go as far as possible. For Dread Shade, we're using Dread Shade as a huge buff. It's going to give us cast speed, it's going to give us an incredible amount of armor, and with those things it really makes you tough. Now we are a low life build, but that huge amount of armor that you're going to get out of this skill is going to make it so you take a lot less damage per hit, which is going to keep your ward much higher. And then the cast speed is just going to let you absolutely annihilate with Marrow Shards being able to cast it so much faster. We have 2 points in Spectral Presence. This increases the area. 3 points in Dying Coven, so that when we're inside the aura buff, we're getting 45% increased cast speed, which is huge for us. We have 4 points in Grim Fate. This gives us 100% increased area to the buff duration, so it's much easier to be inside the aura. It also gives 60% more damage to us, and I believe that's working multiplicatively with our damages in our character sheet. So what's happening is if we have, say, 1000% spell damage, and then you get inside this and it's giving you 60% more, suddenly you jump up to 1600 spell damage. And then what's really nice about that is with 3 points in Flesh Harvest, where you get the increased buff effect per 3% missing health, and that's a 3% increase. So if they're missing 99% of their life, you get a 100% increase. This 60% more damage can get all the way up to almost 120% more damage. So if you have 1000% spell damage, which we do a lot of times, it actually gets you over 2000% spell damage. So it'll bump you up to 2200 spell damage, which is super nice. You're just doing an incredible amount of damage. This is a huge buff to your character for damage. And then 1 point in Symbolic Apparation. This is so that it will actually affect you when you are inside the aura. So we do have that 3 points in Flesh Harvest for the increased buff effect as our Golem loses life. We have 1 point in Dread Plague, which does Spirit Plague on expiration. Now we do have it to where the Dread Shade doesn't expire, but the reason we put 1 point here is because it's cheaper than the 2 points in the Wisdom of the Dead to unlock Martyrdom, and you do want 1 point here because of the fact that we have over 80 intelligence. We're getting ourselves, almost 2,000 armor from just this one node whenever we're inside that aura, the buff aura, and that increases our survivability significantly. We also have 3 points in Lingering Doom, so that it reduces the health decay, 1 point in Pernicious Pact, so it's no longer a health decay, instead you have an everlasting poison applied. This is what makes it last forever. You have 1 point in Egoism, so that your minion will always crit when it does hits. This also gives it a 6-second cooldown, and what's nice about this and why I use it is this allows you to put it on autocast. So we're going to have the Summon Bone Golem on autocast, we're going to have Bone Curse on autocast, we're going to have Transplant on autocast, and we're going to have Dreadshade on autocast. So the only thing you have to worry about is just firing off your Marrow Shards as fast as possible. And since this has a 6-second cooldown, it means that basically you're only going to have one on your Golem. Your Golem has a 10-second cooldown, and you're going to be summoning a new Golem basically every 1 to 2 stacks of this it has on it. So your Golem is basically always going to be alive. You're not going to be the one killing it, and you're not going to have to worry about timing it when it finally does disappear, having to resummon it, because you're just going to have it on autocast. For Transplant, we're using this to get some mana back, because it does get a little mana expensive. Having all your skills on autocast, your Bone Golem is pretty expensive, your Dreadshade's pretty expensive, Bone Curse costs some mana, but you'll be able to keep your mana full no matter what, because Marrow Shards actually cost life, and since we're running low life, it basically actually costs nothing. So you don't have to worry about not being able to fire Marrow Shards, it's not a mana spender. We have 3 points in Bone Armor, so that we have a chance to have Bone Armor when we teleport. You actually have a 100% chance, but it's a 10-second cooldown, so you only get like 1 in 3 transplants, but it'll give you 300 more armor and let you take 12% less damage. That's pretty significant when it does proc for your survivability. We have 1 point in Acolyte's Fervor, 2 points in Sadism for increased global damage. We have 3 points in Pale Blood. This is what gives you that 30 missing mana restored every time that you transplant. We have 1 point in Rain of Blood, 3 points in Depravity, 2 points in Scarlet Rain, and 2 points in Black Mirror. This is for all the extra additional detonations, and the reason that we want as many of those as possible is because every time that we detonate, it's doing a hit, and when Bone Curse is applied on hit, it means that you get 5 or 6 detonations all at once. Every enemy that you hit with those 6 detonations gets Bone Curse hits them 6 times, so you basically can just land on top of stuff and absolutely just blow it up. We have 1 point in Ethereal Body to convert the physical damage to necrotic. We're not too worried about this because it doesn't really boost our damage with Transplant, but what it does do is it allows us to get both the 1 point in Squeamish and 1 point in Thanatoria, so that you have Fear on Arrival and Fear on Departure, which is really nice. So if you do land in there, explode, do a bunch of damage, and it doesn't kill them, it does fear them, so they run away and you don't have to worry about getting hit. This increases your survivability a little bit, and that's why we took it. For Bone Curse is technically your main damaging skill because it always crits on hit. It does really good damage. You know, its damage modifiers are the exact same tags as Marrow Shards. Marrow Shards is hitting usually between 1 and 2,000 Rhaegor damage. It does crit, you know, for about 4,000 damage, but Bone Curse is going to be critting for 3,000 to 10,000 damage every hit that it does, so it's definitely doing about 60% of your total DPS. We have 2 points in Crippling Anguish so that it has slow on hit. That slow lasts for 4 seconds. We have 1 point in Cultist Fervor for some mana efficiency and to be able to cast it quicker. 5 points in Cursed Limbs. This means that after you cast Bone Curse, which will have a 6-second cooldown, for the next 5 seconds you'll apply Bone Curse on all of your hits. We have 3 points in Brittle Bones, so that it has a kill threshold of 12%. It also has 12% more damage. 1 point in Ruptured Corpse. You have a 25% chance for whatever enemies are killed by Bone Curse to explode. It does work with the Bone Curse on hit, so what will happen is your Marrow Shards will fire, it'll apply the Bone Curse on hit. If that Bone Curse hit is what kills it, there's a 25% chance for your corpse to explode, and it is really nice what it does. It basically just looks like Sacrifice was applied, which when you have it proc a whole bunch, it's really cool when everything just goes splat. We have 5 points in Iron Maiden for 50% more damage, 1 point in Acute Infliction for 30% more damage, and 1 point in Illusion of Pain for that 150% more damage, which is huge. And it will now make the skill always crit. You'll only get 1 hit with it, but it gives you that 6-second cooldown, which is what allows you to put it on autocast. For Summon Bone Golem, all we need from the Bone Golem is for him to stay alive. We don't care about his damage, we don't care about anything. We just want him to be alive so we can put Dreadshade on him, we can stay close to him. He'll take some aggro for us, he'll take some hits for us, and then the aura from Dreadshade that he's being hurt for is going to give us a huge boost to damage and survivability. We have 5 points in Amalgam of Sentinels to give them 250 more health and armor and 20 or 75% more health and armor. That's a huge buff to keep him alive a little bit longer. 4 points in Tower of Bones to increase his size and his threat generated. This will help him kind of steal some of the mobs away from chasing you. We have 2 points in Fragments of the Fallen, so that if he is summoned near the corpse of another Golem, and I believe it works with the fact if you resummon the Golem next to your Golem, it kills that Golem off, which counts as technically the corpse. He'll get 4,000 starting armor for the first 15 seconds. He only has a 10-second cooldown, so basically that means you have 4,000 extra armor all the time. We have 4 points in Amalgam of Mages. This was only to unlock the 5 points in Bone Growth for that 35 flat health regen to kind of keep him alive a little bit longer. Now, you don't have to put 4 points here. Definitely feel free to take out that point and get the 6,000 armor. Feel free to also go into Bone Hail, so there's a Bone Nova chance for a little bit extra damage. For passives, in the Acolyte base class, we have 20 points. We have 8 points in Blood Aura, 1 point in Stolen Vitality, 1 point in Crimson Gluttony, 2 points in Bone Aura, and 8 points in Forbidden Knowledge. We have 25 points in the Lich. We actually have much more than that. I'm not sure exactly how many points, but there's definitely more than 25. This just happens to cap out at 25 because it only goes by the number of lines that you can get to, and since you can't have the top upper half, 25 is the max. We have 8 points in Crippling Insight, 8 points in Survival of the Cruel, 8 points with Dance with Death, 1 point in Hollow Lich, 8 points in Unclosing Wounds, and 8 points in Apocryphilia. That is a total of 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 41 points in the Lich. And the Necromancer are Mastered Mastery. We have 50 points, we have 8 points in Elixir of Hunger, 3 points in Risen Army, 5 points in Grave Thorns, 10 points in Cursed Blood. If you guys are wondering why we're doing minion stuff when there's no point to minion stuff, it's because we need stuff at the top of the tree, and literally there's nothing that you can really take that's not minion here in the bottom of the tree, so that's why. Feel free to put the points wherever you want. The bottom half doesn't really matter on the tree. However, the top half does matter. We have 8 points in Tyrant for that 24% increased health, 1 point in Frantic Summons so that we can put 5 points in River of Bones. This note still gives us 400% increased damage when we're converting our leech to damage because of the minion leech in here somehow interacts and just gives us that huge boost of damage. And then we have 10 points in Heresy for that plus 10 intelligence. For our items, for our idols, we're using percent increased health and flat health. The more health you have, the better. We have a few of these going on here. All 4 of them are flat health plus increased health. You can also, if you want, run the 1x2s that give you flat health and increased health. You don't have to have these Acolyte large idols. If you don't have them, you can do a mix and match. The other 1x2s that we have are percent chance to poison on hit, which is a really big deal, but the physical damage is pretty nice. It just gives you a little boost of damage, and we have a couple of those on. We are wearing 2 uniques. We have Enzanguius and we have the Last Steps of the Living. This is what's giving us this huge amount of ward regen while we're just sitting here. Of course, that ward will go up the more life that you have. And then for our items, we're using a Sorcery Staff. We're not worried about the spell mana cost, mainly because Marrow Shards, our main skill, cost health, not mana. You can get up to 120 adaptive spell damage. We only have 115 on ours, but it's still good enough to do a lot of damage. We also went with increased spell damage, increased physical damage. As for what you want to put as suffixes, you can do anything that you want. We happen to go with slow and chill on hit just because we're a ranged build, so being able to hit things before they come to us is going to slow them down and chill them, which usually means that we're going to kill them long before they ever make it to us. We have 1 ruby ring on the left side. We have int, vitality, health, and armor. For our belt, we have a bronze belt with percent of potion health converted to ward. We have increased armor, we have increased health, we have hybrid health. For our other ruby ring, we have int, we have increased spell damage, we have health, and we have flat armor. For our relic, we went with a radiant crest because we're doing a lot of crits. We wanted that critical strike multiplier. Then we have int, physical damage, health, and armor. For our gloves, we have the solar embracers. You can wear any gloves you want. You don't really need the critical strike chance because you're already getting 100% with Bone Curse, and that's really all that matters. So if you just have any pair of gloves that have good stats, that have int, cast speed, hybrid health, and flat health, you can put any one of them on from any other build that you have. For our helm, we went with the Profane Hood for the increased spell damage. This also has int, vitality, increased health, flat health. And for our amulet, we have a brass amulet for that implicit 8% increased cast speed. You can get up to 15%. We also went with physical penetration, physical damage, flat health, and chance to shred armor on hit. For our character sheet, you can see we're running no resistances. You don't have to worry about any resistances. We have some vitality to give us extra health. We have 82 int. Most of that comes from the passive trees. This is huge. It gives us a pretty good boost to ward retention, which is why we get to sit so high with our ward. And then for our damages, as you can see, just standing here in town, we have 943% spell damage. Now remember, as soon as we transplant, for example, that's going to give us a little bit more, but what's really going to give it to you is when you get the Golem and then you put Dreadshade on it and you're sitting here in it, you can see our damage jumps up to almost 2,000%, and as his life goes down, we get a few stacks of poison on him and we'll start reducing it. Our damage is going to start going up, and the more of that we can get on him and the lower that his health gets, you can get as high as, let's see, what's his life at? Oh yeah, we got a ways to go. Let's get him down there. You'll see that we can get his life down to quite a bit. Of course, if you have him on autocast, you're going to be resummoning him. His life's not usually going to get down this far unless he's actually being hit by mobs. But here, we're just going to show how high your damage can actually get if you let his life go down. So, 2,800, and look at that, 3,000%. 3,200%. It looks like we almost hit 3,300 before he died. But you can see just having that is a huge boost, and it's a crazy amount of damage. Alright, for the skill rotation, how I use it, what I tend to do, and if you want to really micromanage, don't do it like this. Don't put your Bone Golem on auto recast, let his life go down so you get that bigger boost of damage. But I like to put all 4 of my skills on autocast, and the only thing that won't be autocast is Marrow Shards, which I'll just basically be holding down. So I will put them all on here, and basically what you got going on is you're going to constantly be transplanting every time you can to get your mana back. Your Bone Golem's going to come back to life. You're automatically going to be casting Dreadshade on to your minion, and then all you're going to do is worry about hitting things with your Marrow Shards, as we're doing here. And like I said, you can, wherever you point it is where it's going to explode and get the projectiles. So for me, I like to just sit here, and I like to kind of aim the cursor always really close. And what that does is, 1, it's going to make it to where you don't just transplant into the mobs because you're aiming at them, and 2, it's going to let you get the widest spread that you can on those projectiles so that you're able to just absolutely annihilate things from a distance. Alright, let's go ahead and get into some gameplay. Alright, travelers, thanks for watching. Don't forget to throw down a sub. There'll be plenty of more content coming, and don't forget to like the video and recommend it to all of your friends that are looking for a great Necromancer build. Have a good one.